Coming up on Tech News Today, Google Plus allows pseudonyms, Megaupload's bust has some chilling implications, and RIM loses a pair of CEOs. Next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Monday, January 23rd, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by Ford, featuring all-electric and hybrid electric technologies. Learn more about the technologies Ford is bringing to its vehicles at Ford.com/technology. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And join us today, Editor-in-Chief of Mashable.com, Mr. Lance Ulanoff. Welcome back to the show, Lance.
Thanks for having me back on.
Great to have you along. We've got a story you wrote up at Mashable about Google Plus allowing pseudonyms we're going to get to in a little bit. But let's start with the big news that broke yesterday. RIM finally changes CEOs. One man replacing two.
Right. I think that's
Mr. Hine.
almost the biggest part of it all.
And these Canadians snuck in this news during like the NFC playoffs. That was the other thing.
I was at the game, just kind of looking at tweets of other people talking about the game that I was at, and I was like, ooh, breaking news. Wow. RIM co-CEOs are stepping down.
They snuck that in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, I was enjoying the game, was going into overtime, and I'm like, I have to write a story.
Thanks a lot, RIM.
Thank you so much.
Torsten, I'm sorry, his name is Torsten Hines, becomes CEO. Company also named, as expected, Barbara Stymiest as its chairperson. Mike Lazaridis will stay on as vice chairman and head an innovation unit at RIM. And Jim Balsley will have no operational role, will remain a director on the board of directors, and keep trying to bring that NHL team to Hamilton. In a call this morning, Torsten Hines said that a new playbook tablet and a new operating system are due out in the fall. He said they would both be great. So rest assured. Also, he said, and this is the thing that sent the stock into a not rising situation, I don't think there is a drastic change needed, which is not what the investors wanted to hear at all.
I mean, it's so funny that every time we would see a rumor of RIM losing or changing their CEOs, the stock would go up. But when they actually announce a new one, and then he says this, it drops like 8% because no change is needed. It's like, yeah, there is. That's why you have the job now.
I mean, I think part of this is the news that Lazaridis and Balsley were stepping down is pretty big. Even if it came late for a lot of investors and just people watching the story in general, it's a pretty big deal. So this might just be Hines easing into, first day on the job. I'm not going to say anything too wacky. He might think that drastic changes are needed. I mean, we're not really going to know what he's going to do until he does them. I do think it's weird, though, that he not only said, I don't think drastic changes are needed, but that really the issue with RIM is in marketing, and they just have to work on their consumer marketing. And I feel like, I don't know. I don't think that that's really their biggest problem.
He did talk about process, too. He said, I'm a German, and I like to focus on process. And he did say that there were some issues there. Process, and actually, he said process and execution, which essentially is your entire company. So, I think that he wove in there the fact that there are real issues at the company, but then he also put aside certain things that had been talked about, the idea of possibly splitting the company into two, licensing out the software to other hardware partners, and maybe just continuing on really pushing with the hardware. That's not going to happen. He said, we're not doing it much stronger together. So, I think you're right, though. I think that it's very hard to say anything that isn't going to be too dramatic in a call like that to actually send your stock into a total tailspin. So maybe it took a little hit today, but the reality is he kind of played it safe, I think, for a reason.
Well, and that is normally what you would expect a new CEO to do, is to say, you know, I'm going to take it slow, I'm going to evaluate things. I mean, we've seen this when Meg Whitman took over, you know, when Tim Cook took over. Nobody comes in and says, I'm drastically changing everything. But in RIM's situation, it's a little different. People have been crying for things to change. So I think maybe he shouldn't have said, I don't think there are drastic changes needed. Just don't talk about that part. Say everything else that he said. He did actually say, regarding licensing BlackBerry OS X, if it makes sense strategically and tactically, that he'd be open to it. And that's far from saying they're going to do it. As you mentioned, Lance, he said that they probably wouldn't, but at least he's not ruling it out, and that's the first time we've seen that.
I want to know more about this innovation unit that Lazaridis is now heading up.
Where they finally get some innovation.
Well, he has time now to innovate. So good luck.
He was always more of a backroom guy anyway. He never should have been the forward-facing or the face of the company. I mean, you saw how that went. And when I would talk to him one-on-one, you could see he's a geek at heart. He loves the technology, and I think he'd rather put on that lab coat and figure out cool stuff and not try and strategize or meet with the board or marketing and get that stuff right.
So maybe he'll turn into like a lovable Woz kind of character. You know, be like, oh yeah, Lazaridis, he's always fun talking about his latest toys. But one of the things that I think about this new guy, Hines, now he was with RIM for the last 4 years. He was a COO, and I think that was part of the reaction.
He was once a co-COO when they had co-CEOs and co-chairmen.
Well, at least he's got one position for this time. But the thing is, some investors were scared about this because it's another guy from RIM moving up instead of being an outsider who might have been like, we're going to change things, we're going to shake things up. But it's kind of curious about what kind of mindset he will have. What will he actually show off? Because if he was on the board with them or as the CEO saying, you're doing great, and that's what he keeps doing, well, that's going to be a huge problem.
Now, whether this is fair or not, some people are criticizing the fact that he's an engineer. He has a master's degree in science and physics from the University of Hanover. He was CTO at Siemens before he came to RIM, and he was co-chief operating officer and then chief operating officer. I think it's a good thing to have an engineer in charge of RIM. It remains to be seen whether Hines is the right engineer for the job. But I don't think that bringing in some kind of marketing and sales guy would be the right thing, for the same reason that we're kind of picking on him for saying marketing is the problem. Marketing is not the problem. You need better products. And I guess what Hines is saying is we have these products. We have these products. We've had them in the line. We've been working on this for 8 months. When BlackBerry OS X finally hits, when we get the new redesigned playbook with OS 2.0 out there, you're going to see a brand new RIM quickly around the horn. Do you believe that?
Well, I feel like if, excuse me, our co-CEOs, Balzuli and Lazaridis, were saying it and no one believed them, I don't really feel like a new CEO echoing the exact same sentiment makes me feel very optimistic for RIM.
Lance, what about you?
I think he understands what the problems are there. I think he understands that the company couldn't stop working on stuff while they were trying to deliver it, as opposed to coming up with an idea, fully executing, then delivering it. So, you know, if he really does get the process, project management, execution all in order, this company does have a chance.
And as an engineer, I'm thinking maybe he thinks that the operating system does work really well with the hardware. He's like, maybe he really believes in this thing. Because I've seen it on the playbook. The London looks like it's a good idea for the future. But if they can just get these phones out on time, that's really what they have to do. Marketing is a whole other issue.
I don't think he's necessarily wrong. I think he may suffer from what Microsoft has suffered in a few product lines, which is fixing the problem that's 2 years old. By the time BlackBerry OS X comes out, we're going to see another iPhone. We're going to see a bunch of Nokia Windows phones and the next generations of Windows Phone. We're going to see Ice Cream Sandwich on all the phones and moving towards whatever Jelly Belly is coming next. So by the time he gets traction, that's not going to be the disruptive operating system that it would be if it came out, say, in December or even now. I think they need to get off the stick faster than they have. And maybe with Lazaridis and Balzuli out of the way, Hines will be able to make things move faster at RIM. It's hard to say. Let's move on to that story I was talking about earlier. Google Plus under fire for its 90 million number. We mentioned that number as part of our numbers roundup last week. Some people saying that that's a little bit inflated. It's not active. Facebook's 800 million is active users, people who log in at least once a month. Google Plus's number is not necessarily active. In fact, it can include people who signed up for Gmail in a way that automatically signed them up for Google Plus. So they're taking a little heat for that. But today, they solved one problem that a small percentage of people have held up as a reason not to use Google Plus, which is the inability to use pseudonyms. Lance, you wrote this up at Mashable. How is this going to work?
So it's very simple. They actually have two things that they're doing here. They're allowing nicknames and pseudonyms, although the nicknames can only go along with your real name. So that's kind of a minor story. The pseudonyms is a bigger story because if you've built up your own brand name online. Now, I'm not talking about actual brands. I'm not talking about celebrities. I'm not talking about companies because Google Pages exists for that. But if you built up, I use Scobalizer as an example. So if Robert Scoble wanted to be Scobalizer on Google+, now he can. However, he does have to prove that he is, in fact, the real Scobalizer. And that usually, there's some documentation he might be asked for, sometimes just a URL, and then they will allow it. What they won't allow is for you to make up a new handle on the spot and say, this is going to be my Google Plus brand. They really only want to do it for now for established brands. And by the way, Google said that there is about 99.9% of all people who sign up for Google Plus sail on through, but it's this tiny 0.1% that get sort of put into this other area where they have to go through this process to see if they really have a valid name. Those are the people who are interested in this, and most of those people just want nicknames. But this was a big deal when it happened over the summer. It was a big deal in the fall. So it's one more reason maybe that people will say Google Plus is a place I want to hang out.
I think it's a little odd that pseudonyms have to sort of be proven beforehand. Okay, I get why Google wants to do this, but let's just say that I call myself Lanester. I don't, but let's just say that I did. And nobody really knows me that way, but I've got a Twitter handle that I've set up. I've got a Facebook page that nobody's following. And I mean, how do you prove that that's actually something that's a reasonable pseudonym to ask for?
And on the other side, how do you prevent spammers?
Right.
Which, why have this policy if I can just go to Twitter and start Lanester and start it on Last.fm in a couple of places and then point at those links?
I just don't know what are the measurements of acceptability when it comes to pseudonyms.
How long do you have to have it, all that kind of stuff.
Think about how Google measures other stuff, how they do their page ranking.
Sure.
They take a lot of things into account. So when they talk about the social and online credits you built up, I have a feeling that there's going to be a bunch of those metrics in there. So there's going to be the existence of that URL. That's number one. Then there's probably going to be inbound links. There's going to be mentions and links to your profile in these other realms. So in theory, they can use all of those tools to measure this thing. But I agree, it's going to be fuzzy, and we'll see over the next couple of days as people start to try and prove their social cred with these brand names, with these handles. If Google delivers on the promise, and in fact you can sort of, if you've had enough activity with that name, you can get it signed up. I've always used my real name online, so I've never had much of a use for handles, but there are a lot of people who prefer just the handle and not anyone else knowing them as they really are.
Now, in Bradley Horowitz's Google Plus post, he explains that they only need to approve things if they flag you, right? So he gave 3 points: references to an established identity offline in print media, news articles, etc., scanned official documentation such as a driver's license, or proof of an established identity online with a meaningful following. So now this feels like law school. It's like what's meaningful following?
It's like Google Plus saying, we don't want you to establish your new pseudonym with us. And I don't know why that would be the case.
And they say they will only do it if they flag you, but what causes them to flag you?
Sometimes we get this wrong. Starting today, it doesn't say exactly why they would flag you.
No, because you're not using a so-called common name, and I think that sort of puts it into. So if it's a single name, the diginator, and they go, okay, well, that's obviously not the person's name. Let's see. Let's ask.
What if they're Czech? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it's funny you say that because they are now allowing different characters. They're trying to be more inclusive of the world. So that's happening too. But it's very true that this is good in theory, but we really have to see what it's like in practice. I almost want to have a special handle just so I can try it out.
And this sticks with Google's plan for Google Plus, right? It's supposed to be an identity service, right? Because people would go to Facebook, oh, is that the real Tom Merritt? Yeah, like that's his Facebook page. That's Tom Merritt. Versus Google Plus, they wanted to do the same thing. They wanted to be the first source of verifying a person. And if you have a nickname like Dr. Kiki, it should be allowable in that kind of case.
I guess what they're saying is we're not really changing that much, except before you had to provide identification to prove that, if your name is Cher and that's it, you have to have a driver's license that proves that. Now we're saying, okay, we don't care if it's a legal name as long as it's a used name. But they're still requiring verifications. This is not open use of pseudonyms, except for the nickname thing where I can be Tom Ace Detect Merritt, with the little.
Well, you could be, you could theoretically, Tom, you could sign up as Ace Detect on Google. If you were never on it, you could sign up with that. You just have to prove that you have a meaningful following under that name. So you never have to actually sign up as Tom Merritt.
And Google warns a couple of times that when you change that name, you add those extra names, that changes your name on all their properties. So I think in your email, too, it changes it. It'll say from Ace Detect instead of
Well, that's
Merritt.
just silly.
So they're obviously, they don't want you to use this very often.
Yeah. All right, let's, before we take a break, note this IFPI story. IFPI is the Global Recording Industry Association, and they have put out a worldwide music sales report that's very positive. Digital music sales grew 8% last year. That is the first time that the growth rate has increased. It's grown in previous years, but this is the first time that the rate at which digital music grew was bigger than the previous year since they began tracking digital music sales in 2004. They want to ascribe most of that growth to subscription services, which went from 8 million to 13 million. Digital music sales account for 32% of all music sales, up from 29% last year, so digital music becoming a greater slice of the pie. Traditional, as traditional as the internet gets, digital music sales like iTunes, like Amazon, where you buy tracks, also grew. It grew a little slower than subscription services. So all of this is good news, right? Hey, here we are with DRM-free music. We're providing people a legal alternative, and people are using it. And IFPI's conclusion is that this shows we need stronger copyright laws.
Why? Because the increases should have been greater?
Well, not exactly, although I'm sure that's kind of read between the lines sort of reasoning. But they point out that stronger copyright laws have started to come into place, and we have seen an uptick, and therefore we need to keep doing this. And they point out a very convincing statistic. They argue that French iTunes sales increased more than 20% since the initiation of the Hadopi law, which is the 3 strikes law in France.
I could see the Hadopi one being kind of it's a nice correlation to put together. It's like, well, lose your internet if you get charged 3 times. I mean, I could see going, okay, I'm buying everything from now on. I don't even want to even think about that. I don't know if it's, I don't think they actually proved anything other than the fact that those 2 things happened at the same time. I don't know if there's a cause and effect. It's easy to jump to the cause and effect, I think.
Right, they're not proving a connection. There's correlation, but not necessarily causation. Does anybody think there's causation?
Well, I mean, there might be for some of the people that are counted in these numbers, but I think more people are just also buying digital music. I think that these numbers going up is just a trend of modern times.
But are they saying that the numbers would be going up much faster if it weren't for this piracy? I mean, there's some numbers in here, 1 in 4 people are still accessing pirated content in some way.
Right, they're making that implication, exactly. You could make just as easy an argument that French iTunes sales increased more than 20% because the selection in France's iTunes has gotten better. That maybe there have been better albums out in France. I mean, I'm not saying that those are why, but you really you need to look at this a little closely and a little more scientifically. And that's my problem with all of these press releases and all of this hoopla around what piracy does and what doesn't. I'm not saying piracy doesn't damage the marketplace at all. In fact, I'm pretty sure it does. But I think we exaggerate how much it hurts the marketplace because we don't actually know. And so anybody who wants to fight piracy is going to say it damages it in crazy amounts. And anybody who is, pro-piracy and thinks that we should have free content and get rid of all of these copyright laws says that it doesn't hurt anything at all. and neither side is actually bringing any kind of evidence to the situation.
Well, it sounds like there's no impartial third party here. It feels like, I mean, and maybe this is the job of the media to sort of step in. Well, what is the real story? I mean, every time these stories, polarizing, SOPA, digital copyright, all of this is so polarizing that no one seems comfortable to sort of step back and go, well, what are the actual numbers? What's the acceleration of piracy versus the acceleration of digital sales? Is one outpacing the other? Are we actually making inroads on piracy, or is the reason that the industry is so afraid is that they don't feel that the acceleration on the digital sales side is such that it can overtake piracy and eventually sort of eclipse it? I just don't feel like we have that story out there.
Yeah, my personal theory, and again, I'm not saying that I have evidence for this either, but just my theory that I would like to test if I had time, is that we don't need stronger laws, but stronger enforcement is having an effect, and awareness is having an effect. And the biggest effect is providing people an easy and attractive legal alternative. And that takes time to pay off. And the reason we're finally seeing a rise is because they've had a legal alternative for several years now. And that's starting to gain momentum and awareness that, hey, you know what? Instead of trolling around on search engines and torrents and sometimes getting a virus or risking not getting what you were asking for, go to iTunes, go to Amazon, or just subscribe to Spotify, and you'll be sure that you get what you're asking for every time. That quality service is actually the best competition for piracy here. And I've been saying that for a long time. All right, let's take a quick break and thank our sponsor, Ford. Ford providing all electric and hybrid electric vehicles. We saw a lot of great announcements at CES around this. 2 new vehicles Ford is bringing to the electric technologies are the 2012 Ford Focus Electric. That's an all-electric vehicle. And coming in 2013, the C-Max Energy Plug-in Hybrid. So you get the benefits of an electric car with the gas engine in there. Both models make use of regenerative braking. So you capture back over 90% of the kinetic energy lost in conventional engines due to friction. When you're braking, when you're coasting, all of that sort of energy feeds back into the battery on these vehicles. The system includes unique sync with My Ford Touch EV features, help you maximize your range. You get a suite of driver information, sweet driver information. You can manage the recharge process through an app on your iPhone. You can determine the most eco-friendly driving routes, remotely control vehicle charge and preconditioning settings, monitor battery state, maximize your energy efficiency. It's My Ford Touch Driver Connect technology, optimized for electrified driving, for configuring vehicle information like your fuel level, your battery power level, your average and instant miles per gallon. My Ford's mobile smartphone app allows you to do all kinds of things like that, value charging, etc. And additionally, with the 2012 Ford Focus Electric, it's an all-electric vehicle, no gasoline engine, meaning you can fully charge it in 3 to 4 hours through a 240-volt home charging station. The Leviton charging station recommended by Ford is available through your dealer, and it's 100% electric with 0 CO2 emissions, has a lithium-ion battery, and new battery technology allows you to top it off. You can just plug it in and charge it back up without worrying about damaging the battery, just like you would a laptop or a cell phone or anything like that. It's kind of amazing. The 2012 Ford Focus Electric is available for reservations now, and the 2013 Ford C-Max Energy Plug-in Hybrid is coming in fall 2013. You can learn more about these vehicles and all the electric technologies Ford is bringing to vehicles at ford.com/technology. We thank them for their support of Tech News Today. All right, we got lots of file sharing going on. Speaking of fighting piracy, Filesonic, along with FileServe, have both disabled file sharing functionality for their services, restricting access so that you can only access the files you upload.
So it's just
to their
a storage
service.
locker.
Right. So, for instance, I use Dropbox. With Dropbox, I can send a link to Sarah and say, "Hey, I've got this document for our show. Check it out here. It's a little big to send through email. She can download it." I've done that with signed documents occasionally, things that aren't terribly sensitive. I'm not worried about being encrypted. I can just put them in Dropbox. Somebody else can find them. When I'm doing the FSL podcast, for instance, I could throw audio elements in there for people to use and run on other systems.
I do that with photos too.
Sure,
in
sure.
Gmail, I have like a 5 gigabyte or megabyte.
Well, Filesonic and FileServe now saying no, because we're worried about people using it for piracy. we're getting rid of that. Now, the interesting thing is Filesonic uses digital fingerprint technology, or at least they say they do, from Vobile to detect copyrighted material. Now, The Verge is questioning whether the system has actually been put into place or not, but at least they've made the effort to try to do this. They also have a DMCA agent. They provide instructions for submitting claims. They encourage users to report violations. So they're doing all the things under the DMCA that one would think you need to do to indemnify yourself and be considered a safe harbor. But because of the takedown of Megaupload, they're saying, you know what, we don't want to take any chances.
But so what is Megaupload, right? Megaupload is a site that allows you to put all these, did allow you to put all these folders and files up on the service. But the big difference between it and, for example, Dropbox is that you could search across Megaupload to find content. And it had all those other, it had mega porn, it was a service that was really designed to share copyrighted content.
Like Mega Video. There was a Mega Video section that got a lot of the attention, yeah.
Right. And Dropbox is nothing like that. Now, I don't know that much about these other sites, but if Filesonic is doing this quick runaround to try and protect itself, then they probably worked in a similar way. Because once you're letting random people search across files that are sitting on your servers, then you're trying to say, look, we got good stuff here, and all you have to do is search for it, you can find it, and then you can access it. We don't really know whether or not we have the rights to it, but come on in.
Now, if you want to put the Filesonics and the Megauploads in one corner and the Dropboxes and the Box.nets in another corner, that makes sense. But what about Rapidshare? Rapidshare, you would think, would be on the Megaupload side of things. However, they say they're not concerned. They believe they're a legitimate hosting site, and they've got nothing to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, I know Rapidshare for years because I would see these things online. You're like, okay, Rapidshare, here's like the 40 links from Rapidshare for a movie or something. And they've been around so long and had so many legal threats. They're pretty solid at this point, I think. I think they know what they're doing to still be around at this day and age, considering how long they were like pretty much the front runner for a while when it came to a lot of this illegal stuff. I think they're probably pretty secure.
I have seen illegal stuff being shared on Rapidshare, so they certainly can't argue that it doesn't happen. But if you can't search via Rapidshare, then they can just say, listen, let us know if you come across it and we'll take it down. But otherwise, we're providing a legitimate service.
Somebody in the chat room suggesting that, what's stopping people from sharing their logons to pass files? Nothing. Nothing's really stopping people just to have one giant shared logon. Hey, guest. There you go. There's your thousands of...
And what does Rapidshare call itself? It calls itself a hosting service. Dropbox doesn't call itself a hosting service. So... once you say it's what are you hosting? You're hosting something that other people can access. Hosting seems more like full website, although it's really just for file download. So I think Rapidshare is also in a slightly different business, but they haven't had such crazy business practices as Megaupload to sort of raise the red flag.
Now, we may be being unfair to Filesonic to put them on the Megaupload side. If you look at their site, they say it's actually unlimited storage. They're an unlimited storage company, and they've got their site set up to look very much like a Dropbox. And they even have the Vobile copyright filter right up front. So I get the feeling Filesonic may be uncertain that they're trying to become a Dropbox, but they know that there has been illegal content shared in the past. They're uncertain that they could claim that they never knew. That's what got Megaupload in trouble in one respect, is that it's claimed that they encouraged people to do this. So Filesonic may be saying, you know what, we've got some skeletons in our closet. We're trying to change our ways, but for the time being, let's just change the service.
Or the way that... Go ahead, Lance.
I was just going to say that if you do a search, Filesonic Mission Impossible 4, there are hundreds of files that you could download right now. So, again... if you're allowing your site to be crawled and you're hosting these files, I think you have to be worried.
Yeah, and when I do Dropbox Mission Impossible, I get nothing. I mean, I get stories about Mission Impossible that include a Dropbox ad on them, apparently. But yeah, it's not nearly the same thing. So in some ways, you have to give credit to the MPAA that they aren't going after a Dropbox because of the way they work, because Dropbox and Box.net very avowedly aren't promoting the file sharing, where other services may be sort of in the middle, and somebody like Megaupload was leaning towards encouraging, trying to skate on that side of the law and follow the letter of the law well, maybe not the spirit of the law. All that said, it does raise the prospect of a chilling effect where companies, you know, let's say Filesonic is trying to change their ways. Maybe they have some skeletons in the closet. Maybe they don't. But they're trying to become a Dropbox competitor. Suddenly they can't because they're worried about getting sued or getting raided. And now they have less functionality than their competitors.
If you look at everything that's going on with Megaupload, it's scary to say the least. And maybe Filesonic has never done anything they think is wrong at all. But the fact that you can have pro accounts where they're making money off of people who might be illegally sharing music or content, whatever. I mean, that might be enough to just say, unless we know the outcome of this Megaupload case, and it, you know, maybe it turns out well for the Megaupload executives. We don't know how that's going to happen yet. Better safe than sorry, because we don't want to go to prison. And
then and Filesonic, by the way, a UK site, they could go the route of uploaded.to, which has blocked all US users. And said, you know what, forget it. We're just not going to deal with you anymore. Uploaded.to actually pays money based on the number of people who download a file. So they are very much into the sharing. That is their business model. And they're just not going to deal with the United States anymore. Speaking of Megaupload, Kim.com and the 3 others who were arrested had their day in court now for a bail hearing this morning in New Zealand. .com's attorney told the court that Megaupload has nothing to do with the uploading of pirated films or video, and that the U.S. government completely misunderstands the company's business. And TWiT, arguing on behalf of the United States, told the court .com is a significant flight risk. He is in possession of illegal firearms when he was arrested. The tale is that he had a sawed-off shotgun in his hand, and alleged that he would be able to start up Megaupload again if released. That is, TWiT alleged that he would do that. And so, therefore, he should not be granted bail. Paul Davison, on behalf of Kim.com, said that Kim can't go anywhere. The authorities have seized all his assets. How is he going to get anywhere? He said that .com's wife is pregnant with twins, and so he has a hardship case to be given bail. And it would be impossible for .com to operate Megaupload again, given the fact that all of his assets have been seized and that he is willing to submit to electronic surveillance if granted bail.
There is good news. There is good news for Mr. .com. Google Plus will accept his pseudonym.
That's right. Well, now, is it a pseudonym? I think he may have legally changed the name. I'm not sure.
Even better.
Yeah.
Show the driver's license.
Exactly.
Google's happy to change your account.
The original name, Kim Schmidt.
Right.
Kim Schmidt.
Judge said his decision would apply to all 4 men, but he will keep all 4 men jailed until he makes the decision on bail. Meanwhile, Megaupload has dropped the Universal Music Group case that they had been pursuing over the takedown of the Megaupload video from back in December. They dismissed it without prejudice, though, right? And Iyaz, that means that they could bring the case back.
Yeah.
Right? So they're sort of keeping their options.
The odds are that they want to take all their money for their legal defense for .com and the rest of these guys, because this Universal Music Group takedown thing is kind of small potatoes at this point.
Yeah.
Because you need to get your CEO out of jail.
Let's finish up with the Supreme Court determining that the practice of installing a GPS tracker on your car without a warrant is violating the Americans' Fourth Amendment. This has been kicking around for a long time. We've covered it a few times on Tech News Today. There have been conflicting decisions in different parts of the country. Supreme Court has settled it. If you're the police, you cannot go LoJack me without a warrant. It's like a wiretap. You have to go in front of a judge and prove that there's a reasonable cause for you to track me. Now comes the speculation of how this will apply to cell phones and other mobile devices. Because the way it was ruled, Justice Scalia, who wrote for the majority, said that physical trespass is what occurred because they put a thing on something I owned. And therefore, reasonable expectation of privacy didn't need to be considered here. It's all about the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure, invasion of my property, and therefore it's unconstitutional in this case, and that's all there is to it. However, Justice Alito, by the way, there's a 9-0 decision. It was a unanimous decision, but Justice Alito, who concurred but wrote a separate opinion, argued that extended warrantless tracking itself violates the Fourth Amendment, regardless of whether the government committed trespass. So if you could somehow track my car via GPS without going and attaching anything to it, it would still violate the amendment. And that's where the cell phone and mobile device part comes in, right? With a cell phone and mobile device, I can track you. I don't ever have to invade your property. I don't ever have to come anywhere near you. I just have to be able to get the data on your cell phone. And whether we need a warrant for that or not will be the next big battleground.
Yeah, but see, the majority opinion is the thing that's going to have the most weight. Okay, so this very limited scope of what they wrote about this physical trespass, that's what everybody can point to in the long run. And concurrences in some instances get more and more weight as years go on. So the fact that they have different grounds on these things, it's that majority one that's going to hold the most weight for the long term.
Although Scalia said we don't need to consider that. He didn't say it wasn't a consideration. So that's
a standard kind of Supreme Court thing. If you don't have to rule on an issue, you don't touch it. It's very unusual, or at least it was considered unusual when I was in school, that the Supreme Court would bother to answer questions that they didn't have to, because otherwise it's just overstepping. That's what people would always say. So they would stick to the most narrow grounds they could. What's the only issue we need to settle? That's this Fourth Amendment issue. We're not going to go into particular other tests. We're not going to talk about how this would shake out with GPS on a cell phone. We're just going to talk about this particular situation.
So you're seeing a difference in styles here. Justice Scalia is saying, I don't have to determine whether mobile phones or anything else would theoretically require a warrant, because I can determine that this GPS in this particular case was unconstitutional because of property invasion, and I'm going to leave it at that. Whereas Alito argued that there should be a broader interpretation. Interestingly, Justice Sotomayor wrote her own concurrence and signed on to Scalia's majority opinion, but said it may be necessary to reconsider the premise that an individual has no reasonable expectation of privacy in information voluntarily disclosed to third parties. She's saying this idea that somehow when I give a phone number to someone when I sign up for their service means I no longer have a reasonable expectation of privacy because I told someone else about it is outdated. It made sense in the village when I go down to the baker and tell him something, then therefore it's public. But it's ill-suited to the digital age in which people reveal a great deal of information about themselves to third parties in the course of carrying out mundane tasks.
Could be music to Mark Zuckerberg's ears. I'm telling you, he probably wrote that down. He's filed it away. He's going to be pulling it back out in a few years as more privacy concerns rise up. Now, I was going to say about that other part of the ruling with the minority ruling that at some point we will be driving around cars with built-in GPS. That theoretically, with a court order, someone could light up. A judge or the law enforcement could light up so they can find you. So it won't be a matter of whether they've stuck something on your car or if you even have a phone in your car. The car is a rolling computer. So, that foresight is important. We don't have to deal with it right now, but it will come back around.
All right, let's move on to the news fuse. Global Equities Research says more than 350,000 textbooks were downloaded from Apple's iBooks store over the first 3 days of their availability last week. The iBooks Author app also racked up 90,000 downloads over the same time. So is it curiosity? Good start for the new textbook industry for Apple. Who's to say?
According to a filing with the Office of Public Records, Google spent $9.68 million in lobbying the federal government in 2011. Google's money went towards lots of things, including renewable energy policies and online advertising regulation. In 2010, Google only spent around $5 million. As an aside, Microsoft spent $7.34 million on lobbying in 2011.
Reuters reports YouTube streams 4 billion videos every day, and 60 hours of video are uploaded every minute. Back in May 2011, Google saw a measly 48 hours of video uploaded per minute. YouTube's ads generated around $5 billion in revenue for Google over the course of a year, and Google picked up YouTube back in 2006 for only $1.65 billion. So
everybody's like, when are they going to make that money back?
There you go.
They made it back. Also, law enforcement, just wait long enough, we'll be surveying ourselves. You won't have to do anything. The latest Pew Research report says 19% of American adults now own some kind of slate or tablet, which is now almost twice the number that did before the holiday buying season. A mid-December telephone poll showed just 10% of U.S. adults owned a tablet. It's an identical trend for e-book readers, 10% pre-holiday season, 19% in January. Owners of either a tablet or an e-book have gone from 18% of U.S. adults to 29% in the same period.
Successful holiday season for e-readers and tablets or slates. because some people call them that. Facebook Director of Product Blake Ross and engineers from Twitter and MySpace released a new bookmarklet called Don't Be Evil that will modify Google's search results to include more social networks other than just Google+. Available at focusontheuser.org. When you click the bookmarklet after a Google search, you'll get results from Twitter, Facebook, Foursquare, even Google+, but more algorithmic, at least pure, as the engineers see it. The team open sourced the code, and in the video walkthrough encourages Google to use their code.
Apple Insider says Apple will integrate 802.11ac in its products this year, even though the standard is not set to be ratified until the end of 2012. Now, 802.11ac allows for gigabit speeds wirelessly, in theory. In other Wi-Fi news, Microsoft said that Windows 8 will be able to connect to Wi-Fi networks in just 1 second. So when you turn your tablet on, it'll be right on the network. Microsoft says Windows 7 takes around 12 seconds on average to connect right now.
Bloomberg reports Nokia probably sold 1.3 million units globally of its Windows phone-powered Lumia since it debuted in November. Bloomberg came up with that number by averaging 22 estimates, which range from 800,000 to 2 million. These numbers are about shipments, not sales, but still pretty good.
A consumer group has asked European regulators to stop Google's acquisition of Motorola Mobility, citing anti-competitive concerns. In its letter, Consumer Watchdog says that the combined company would provide Google with an unprecedented dominance in virtually all aspects of the mobile world. Regulators will make a ruling on February 13th.
AT&T is ready to hand over spectrum to T-Mobile valued at $1 billion as a result of the proposed merger between the two companies failing. And once again, the FCC decides the success of the transfer. The Wall Street Journal reports the companies need permission from the commission in order to make the handover work out according to plan, though we haven't seen a specific deadline set for the transition.
Fire up the randomizer!
Randomizer.
You don't fire up the randomizer, you engage.
Engage. Randomizer. Engage.
Apparently, the new thing these days is to interrupt people playing classical music with your cell phone. And a new video is making the rounds of a Slovakian violinist, Lukas Kmit, playing, I think, something from Mahler when you hear the Nokia cell phone ringtone interrupt him. Now watch how he reacts.
There.
Plays it right back at him. And then he just kind of riffs on it for a while and finishes out his piece and actually ends the entire piece with the Nokia ringtone, which is a waltz. Leo was telling us earlier.
Yeah, Leo also said he thought the whole thing was set up because the guy had basically gotten to the end of his solo, paused. Nokia ring happens once, then it happens again and it's louder, which does happen with cell phones sometimes. But it's almost too perfect.
It is kind of perfect.
I want to believe it.
I don't know. You know, the FedEx thing actually turned out to be real. So
the FedEx thing I thought was real from the beginning.
I thought
never
it was set up.
I could go either way. I could see this guy just being kind of like, well, all right, you know, he's a trained musician. That's possible.
Totally.
It's kind of jazz meets classical.
Yeah.
Lancey, what do you think?
What is the music? I was trying to, is the music that's coming out of the phone classical? Because he clearly sort of thought about it.
Yes.
And recognized it and then said, fine, I can go with this. I mean, I actually believed it 100%. The best reaction I've ever seen to that truly annoying thing happening.
Also, if it was kind of staged or whatever, you'd think he would have got it like on tune, on key with the ringer itself, but he actually transposes it, which takes a little bit of thinking. You have to have a musical mind to really do that on the fly. I think it's real.
And I like the look of irritation he shows for like half a second. He's like, that's not happening right now. And then he's like, I'm going to change this. So I don't know if musicians are necessarily great actors. Maybe they are. So he was just able to fake it. If this was fake, I think it was real.
You guys really want to believe that this is real.
I do.
No, I like your optimism.
I'm 50-50.
I'm going to put up posters.
Like, I want to believe
I
as
want
well,
to believe.
but it is a little too perfect.
But
so
I've been burned before.
Yeah.
I believe it, and I want to make it my own ringtone. I want to make it
just you make the violinists playing it a ring. I know, yeah, exactly. It's the Grand Valse by the Spanish classical guitarist and composer Francisco Tárrega, written in 1902. That is the Nokia ringtone. It's from that piece. So it is classical music itself. You're right, Lance. Let's check what's incoming.
Oh, the calendar,
let's,
actually.
No, let's do the calendar.
Dun-dun-dun,
I missed
which
one day and I
just did.
forget how the show goes.
President Obama will host a Google Plus Hangout on January 30th to address responses and questions to tomorrow's State of the Union address. So the deal is that after the State of the Union, participants or hopeful participants have until the 28th to submit videos to youtube.com/White House. And then those chosen videos will be part of the Google Plus Hangout. In addition, the people chosen have the opportunity to be a live participant in the Google Plus Hangout itself, which is pretty cool. So if you're interested, that's where you participate.
I just want everyone to do impersonations in the Hangout. Like right back at the president. Look.
Look.
Yeah,
Put on your
I'm
headphones.
sure they'll last really long time in the Hangout. I mean, do whatever you want, but you know, if you want to take it seriously, they could probably go ahead and disconnect
You want to be
that
arrested
quickly.
without trial.
Wiretapping? You don't know the half of it. Apple is set to announce earnings tomorrow. This, of course, is the first period to include the iPhone 4S, went on sale in October. Apple's own estimates are historically always conservative, and they expect a revenue gain of 38% over the same quarter last year. And Asus has promised that the Transformer will get ice cream sandwich. Yes, Android 4.0 update is coming mid-Feb, says Asus. And if it does, it'll be a Valentine's miracle.
Yay. Now let's check what's incoming.
Incoming message.
We
You
got
bet,
a
Tom.
voicemail from Matt, who is a little late to the party. We were talking about connected washing machines at CES, but he's finally got a good thought about it. He caught up with us. Here's what he says.
Matt, the software engineer from Auburn, Alabama. I was catching up on some of your CES coverage, and one thing that you guys did not cover in the uses of having a phone that could talk to your washing machine. The washing machine would not turn on when the phone was in it. All right, I figured that would be the most useful use of that technology. All right, love the show. Bye.
Now, I immediately said, you know what? That's actually a very good thing, right? Because people wash their washing machine. You didn't believe me.
I said, who has ever washed their iPhone? And then you started sending me message board.
Just search
Conversations.
iPhone and washing machine.
Because to me, it's like...
It's everywhere.
I will sometimes wash my earbuds because they don't really weigh anything, and I put them in my pocket frequently. And so that's somewhat of an honest mistake, but it's like, how do I... My iPhone doesn't... I guess I just don't have pockets that are big enough to even put the iPhone in. And
People
I don't wash
they just
purses.
have it in their pants pocket, probably. And they
Well,
throw
that's terrible.
the
I
jeans
mean, this happens to
into
families a
the-
lot. I mean, maybe you're not doing your own laundry, and your mom grabs your jeans, and you're like, my phone was in there.
Yeah, that's true.
Stop. Because,
That's
I mean,
true.
if it's your own phone, you're probably not going to, like, wait a second. That's a little heavy. That's my...
Even then it happens.
You leave it in your pocket all the time. It's never charged anyway, so it's useless.
Exactly. You forget it's there.
If it's not charged,
Right.
it'll still kill it.
With today's busy lifestyles, it's hard to know where your phone is. Something like that. All right, so I stand corrected. People wash their phones. And it would be great if a washing machine would say, no. Not until you take your phone out, I will not wash
Thank you, Matt.
your clothes. John Cannibal Patsfield, that's another good candidate for a Google Plus.
At
pseudonym.
huntinghumans.com.
Whatever.
Whoa. It's actually a poetry thing.
John, or Cannibal says, I've been thinking, what would it take for Apple to take steps to allow people to get credits for the classes that they take on iTunes U? If that could happen, you could potentially see a worldwide shift in education and a democratization of the concept, which is exactly what Apple does really well, right? Anyway, I'm really enjoying this concept, rolling it around in my head, and I'm very curious to hear your perspective on the matter. Love the show.
I both love it and wonder, this is almost trending into forecast territory, if it's going to be necessary. I think, with Khan Academy and a lot of things out there, some people think we're moving to a situation where we don't need to have credit per se as we have thought about it in the past, and you just need to be able to prove your ability to know or do something.
Yeah, but that presupposes that that employers are going to bother to look at what you know versus, oh, look, you have a degree or you have this many credits.
It's certainly not going to happen overnight.
So that kind of thing will probably be a good little interim thing. But Apple, I mean, they didn't like working with cell phone carriers. They're going to work with universities to get credit systems to work and have transfer credit. That's not going to happen.
Lance is a hiring manager. He's scoffing at me right now.
Well, I'm just thinking you're speaking like somebody who has a lot of college debt, tuition debt. Yes, wouldn't it be wonderful if we didn't actually have to pay for any credit? Just go and prove that we know stuff. I think for better or worse right now, people who are hiring people, looking at resumes, do a quick sort of check. There's the degree, there's the college, there's the degree, what was the major, and then you go from there. Experience ultimately will matter more. But that I think we are generations away from a degree not mattering all that much.
So bringing me back down to earth, which I appreciate. What about the idea of having iTunes U courses count as a sort of distance education? It wouldn't be too far-fetched. You already have the situation where you can study at home with University of Phoenix and things like that, and a lot of major universities do extension courses that way.
I think that's a fantastic idea. You know, that's something we do have now is the reality that to accomplish something, to learn something, to do a job, you don't have to be physically present in that space. You have to have access to the information, access to the levers that can sort of record what you're doing, and a validation that you've in fact gone through this stuff. So I think that's a real and very plausible idea.
You will have to pay for that credit.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, the course is free.
Less.
The credit is not free.
An Apple gets 30% the tuition fee.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you pay for credits wherever you go. I mean,
exactly.
but I hope you would pay less because there's far less infrastructure involved with an online course than there is going to a big university.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, that's it for this episode of Tech News Today. Thanks, everybody who contributed. We have 4,200 people in our subreddit now at technewstoday.reddit.com. Thanks to all of you who go in there and participate. It's a great way to get a sense of what stories you think are most important when we look at all the different sources to figure out what's buzzworthy out there. So go to technewstoday.reddit.com. Make your voice heard by either submitting stories or voting them up or down, just as important. Lance Ulanoff, thanks so much for joining us. Let folks know about what's going on over there at Mashable and where they can find you online.
Well, it's obviously Mashable.com, and I'm on Twitter as Lance Ulanoff. Very easy, no weird handles in there. And Mashable's just all over everything. You know, I'm starting to get into the mindset of Mobile World Congress, so that's going to be a big coverage opportunity. But we're doing the big stories every day, and the stuff I talked about today, including the RIM and the Google Plus name handle and all that, is on Mashable.com right now.
So follow up if you want to read more. Thanks, Lance. Appreciate it. Good to have you on, man. We are available on the web, twit.tv/TNT. You can email us. Let us know what you think. TNT@twit.tv is our email address. You can give us a call. Leave us a voicemail message like Matt did. 260-TNT-SHOW. Peter Hoff from The Daily joins us tomorrow. We'll see you then.